How's it going, guys? It's Diego from the Foot and Fist Sports Network, finally back to talk about the UFC, and he back, trust me, he back. GSP, George St. Pierre, is finally coming back to the UFC. It's been officially announced by Dana White, and I am actually pretty damn excited to see what this guy can do, because if there's one thing that the UFC needs, and MMA in general, it is a guy who can bring some star power and bring some entertainment, especially because Conor McGregor isn't going to be fighting inside the octagon for a long time, because the only fight that he wants is Floyd Mayweather right now. So there's definitely a need for really entertaining fights. Now, GSP isn't necessarily going to be the guy that bring the entertainment fight, but he is going to be the guy that's going to bring the spectacle back. Everybody, or at least everybody I can think of, is going to be very, very willing to get their hands on a guy like GSP, and the fans, at least, me personally, are going to be very excited to see him fight, because whether you like it or not, whether he put on the most entertaining fights or not, which he didn't, he is still one of the most polarizing guys in MMA history. He's one of the best of all time. He's one of the GOATs. He's on the Mount Rushmore of MMA, in my opinion. So you can't really deny the fact that him coming back to mixed martial arts is a great thing. I'm really excited to see what happens. And I think there's really only one option that really makes sense for his return fight, and that is a rematch with Nick Diaz. Diaz and both Diaz brothers now only want the big money fights, and GSP is undoubtedly one of the biggest money fights you can think of, especially at welterweight. Wonderboy Thompson, as good of a fighter as he is, he doesn't really sell. Tyron Woodley most certainly isn't a hugely popular guy, especially because he's always complaining about racism and stuff like that, and that's a whole different story. But he's not really a guy that people really like, and people don't really dislike him, but they just don't care enough about him to really make him a money fight. Robbie Lawler, as popular as he is because of how fun he isn't a big money fight. There's just really nobody in that division other than Nick Diaz that could really offer GSP a big money fight, and the same thing vice versa for Nick Diaz. So that's pretty much the only matchup that really makes sense for both guys, and that would be one hell of a fight for them to come back in. The winner could definitely deserve a title shot. Now, they're talking about GSP maybe challenging Michael Bisping for the UFC middleweight title, but I personally don't see how that's even plausible. For one, GSP has never fought at middleweight, and other than that, he has to come back. And sure, I can understand giving him an immediate title shot at welterweight. He's the greatest of all time in welterweight, but like I said, he's never fought at middleweight. And we don't know what he's going to do at welterweight, let alone at middleweight. Can he still compete with the best middleweights? Because these guys are getting bigger, they're getting stronger, they're getting faster, they're just getting better. And we don't know what he's going to be able to do at middleweight. And then granted, Michael Bisping isn't exactly what I would call an elite fighter. He is a very good fighter, but I think that he's very fortunate to be at the top. And I think that if he fights Luke Rockhold 10 times, he loses 9 out of 10. I think if he fights Yoel 9 out of 10 times, he will lose. I think that the same thing with Jacare, same thing with somebody like Mousasi. There's just so many people in that division that could beat him, and realistically, I don't think he's going to have that title for very much longer. So I can't really see why they would want to give him Michael Bisping, although that is a fight that would sell, because Michael Bisping, he's a trash talker. He will talk shit about GSP. GSP is GSP, so he's going to sell. So it does make sense from that point of view, and I guess you could say it's kind of like a super fight because GSP would be moving up in weight. But we don't really know. I personally wouldn't go that route, just because I think that Michael Bisping already had a gimme fight against Dan Henderson. Put him against somebody who deserves it, like Yoel Romero or Jacare Souza, and make him fight a real legit guy. And make GSP fight for the welterweight title. If not, then have him have a super fight before he can really go for that title. I think that Nick Diaz is the perfect example. If they don't want to give him Nick Diaz, they maybe give him somebody like Carlos Condit, but I don't really see that being an option either, just because, Carlos, as much of a fun fighter as he is, and he's one of my favorite fighters, he just isn't that polarizing figure. And I don't think that that's a fight that really interests GSP in particular. He already had a very hard-fought win against Carlos Condit a couple years, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But still, I don't think that's really interesting. I think that Nick Diaz, because of how things went and all the controversy, because people were talking a lot of shit about how GSP sort of laid and prayed, even though that was one of the most dominant performances I've seen. There was really only one round where Nick Diaz was tagging him. Other than that, GSP had an easy-ass win. But for some reason, a lot of fans were calling him a pussy and stuff like that, which I can get. He fights kind of like a defensive style, kind of like Floyd Mayweather, only his defense is his offensive wrestling. But at the same time, you have to give props to the guy. And honestly, I would love to see that fight. Nick Diaz hasn't been there in a long time. That would be hilarious to see him take on his bitter rival, GSP, in what would be one of the most hilarious fights, but also a pretty interesting fight to see where both guys are at in their careers. Can GSP still hang with a guy who's at the top? Is Nick Diaz even still at the top? These are all answers that we would have to answer right there. And These are all questions we have to answer, and that's definitely a fight that would interest the fans. I think it would interest both fighters, and it would interest, most importantly, the UFC, because at the end of the day, they're the people that cash the checks, and they're the people that are going to have to be making these fights. I think that'd be a very, very interesting fight, a very fun one, and hopefully that will happen in the near future. I do not want to see him fight Bisping. I most certainly don't want to see him fight Anderson Silva. I mean, like 5, 6, maybe even 7 years ago, that would have been a fun fight, just because, you don't really know what happens. They're battling to see who's the GOAT. Before John Jones obviously sort of took that spot, but they're battling to see who is the top dog in the world of mixed martial arts. Back 7 years ago, that made sense. Nowadays, Anderson Silva is nowhere near his prime. I don't really want to see him fighting GSP. I want to see him fight maybe somebody around the fringes, the middleweight division, because I just don't think he can really compete. Well, he can definitely compete with Michael Bisping. I think he probably beat Michael Bisping. But at the same time, I just don't see why you would want to make these two guys fight, because they're over the hill. It would be very Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather-esque. Yes, it'd be an interesting fight because of their names, but we don't really want to see two guys that are out of their prime. Or we don't know about GSP, but we know Anderson Silva is definitely out of his prime. We don't want to see that happen. At least I don't. Let me know in the comment section down below if you do. But let me know who you want to see GSP fight. Personally, like I said, Nick Diaz, Bisping maybe second, Anderson Silva last. But which one of those three do you want to see GSP fight? And is there anybody else that you actually want to see GSP fight? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed the video, guys, please hit the like button. And please subscribe to the channel. And please share it on any forums, any social media, anywhere you think that mixed martial arts fans could follow this. And if you enjoyed it, like I said, please subscribe. That's a very big help. And I thank every single one of you that do subscribe. Videos will be coming out more often right now. I took a little bit of a break because I was very sick, but I'm back in business, baby. So make sure you tune into my channel, and I will see you in the next video.
Okay, I back. Trust me. I back. I promise, Michael Bisping. I back.